Welcome everybody to Edge of the Rabbit Hole. We have a fantastic show coming up for you tonight, if I could speak.
Mercury.
Yes, Mercury. Yes, it's been one of those weeks so far. But Robert Bosnak is with us. Talk about alchemy coming up next. Welcome back, everybody, to Edge of the Rabbit Hole. I'm author and researcher Mike Ricksecker. With me, as always, my co-host is Victoria Monday, and down in the chat room, Alina, moderating the chat. We have a fantastic show coming up for you tonight. We're going to get deep into alchemy tonight with Robert Bosnak. Now, Robert has been a Zurich-trained Jungian psychoanalyst for over 40 years and pioneered the embodied imagination method. I'm really interested to hear about this. He's the author of several books, nonfiction and fiction, translated into a wide variety of languages. He is past president of the International Association for the Study of Dreams. I'm also interested in that. And founder of the Santa Barbara Healing Sanctuary. Robert, welcome to the show this evening. Glad to have you aboard.
Thank you very much for having me on this rabbit hole.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. A lot of topics we could really start with you. I want to start with alchemy. We have other topics here that we could also discuss because you have a number of books that you've written, like we said, both nonfiction and fiction, many of them focusing on alchemy. So let's get into what
especially my work on fiction. I have studied alchemy for 50 years now, and I'm beginning to slowly get a little bit of it. My book's called Red Sulphur. It's a series of 4 novels, and these 4 novels are about an alchemist family who are in possession of the Sorcerer's Stone, or the Philosopher's Stone. And it's the last Philosopher's Stone in history. It was made 200 years ago, and they have it. And they have to carry it through history, and they're being pursued by kings who want to use it to make gold, and by phantoms. And it is the history of alchemy. It's the history of alchemy in fiction, and in a very, I think, very exciting triangular relationship between 2 women who help him to go through to create the red sulfur, to make more red sulfur. They have children that are being pursued. It's a work of magical realism, and a little bit like the heroes, the superhero stories. And if you want to learn about alchemy, it's a great way to learn. And I think it's a very exciting series of novels. You can find them at Amazon.
And there's 4 of them, right?
Right.
There's 4 of them.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. It's a series.
Okay. That sounds exciting.
I'm trying to bring like you said, Victoria, Mercury. I'm trying to bring the one cover up here, and the system's just not working for me right now. There it is. There we go.
Oh,
That's the cover for the first edition. We are now having a second revised edition, and this is books 1 and 2, and now book 3 and 4 are out as well. And you can find them all on Amazon. And it took me about 10 years to write it, and it's the most complete work on alchemy fiction that I have ever seen. So I'm very excited and proud of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, when people think of the Philosopher's Stone, as you mentioned, a lot of people have been introduced to this idea in modern times, through the Harry Potter books, the Philosopher's Stone. Nicholas Flamel was mentioned in there. And, Nicholas Flamel, however, is a real historical figure. So does he play a part in this book, or in this set of books?
No, Nicholas Flamel is from the 15th century, 14th, 15th century, and my book is taking place in the 17th century. The interesting part of the 17th century and alchemy is where alchemy is coming together with science, and there is the emergence of science that slowly begins to rise. The church is very much trying to repress science, so there's a war going on in Europe between the people that are pro-science and the people that try to repress it. It's an actual war. So this is set in actual Europe of the 17th century. Flamel was said, together with his wife Petronella, I think, to have made the Philosopher's Stone. The Philosopher's Stone and all of alchemy is usually done between men and women. So there's a man and a woman, and the erotic tension between them helps them to create the stone, because the stone is alive. The Philosopher's Stone is alive. It's a living form. It's a living animation form. It animates the world. It animates the metals. And as it animates the metals, it transforms them. So it's alive, and therefore it works better in a relationship. And that's why Flamel had a relationship with his wife, and they worked very strongly together. In this novel, it's a relationship between one of the women who cannot have children, and the stone has to be passed along in the line of this alchemist that comes from his ancestors. So she says, well, my daughter, or the person who she brought up as her daughter, can have the children for us. And that, of course, creates havoc. And that havoc goes on for a long period of time. And they then have each a child, and that's the continuation of the story.
That's absolutely fascinating. And so, and it's interesting when you read fiction like that, because you are incorporating a lot of real history and intertwining it within this fictional story. And I always find that a fascinating way for people to learn about histories. They're being entertained with the fictional story, but they're also learning as well.
That's the idea. And the 17th century was really important, because we are living in a world of science, and we think that science is the norm. But there was an enormous shift happening then, because alchemy and science were very different. Alchemy was a different kind of science, because what happened in the 17th century is that there became a split between the subject, me, and the object over there. When alchemy was there was no such split. Everything around was alive. The metals were alive. And there was a communication between the living metals and the alchemist. So it was a subject-to-subject communication. And that actually ended in the 17th century at the beginning of science. And this book also shows that we gained a lot. I mean, we're talking through computers to each other on different ends of the world. But we also lost a lot. And this also tells the story of what we lost.
Interesting. So when you talk about, and I find it fascinating that you're using the term living metal. So are we talking about metal that has a specific energy intergrained within it, or what are you referring to with living metal?
Yes. Well, the word energy is a very modern word, right? We are currently seeing that the basic law currently of energy is relativity theory. It's E is mc squared. So the notion is that when you go to the core of the atom, you will find enormous amounts of energy. That's the nuclear bomb. That's nuclear energy. For the alchemist, it was different. For the alchemist, it was when you would go to the core of the atom, because there were many alchemists who were also atomists. When you go to the core of the atom, you find the source of creativity. It is not energy, it is creative force. It is animation. So what the alchemists were doing is, by going to the core of things, they were not trying to create energy. They were trying to access the creative force that created the world to begin with, because they live in a world of creation. They live in a world of constant creation. And we live in a world that maybe once was created, but now we are living in a world of laws. This was the world before there were these general laws that we live in after Newton. Newton is also an important part of this book.
Okay, now I have a question.
Yeah,
Good.
Okay, I heard you speak earlier, and you were talking about Richard Feynman, who was doing the Manhattan Project, and you said he was using physical intuition, meaning
yes,
he was using his body. He was actually the elements or something like that. Is that a way to manifest? And is that different from physical intuition?
Well, the physical intuition that he used, he was a quantum physicist.
Or I'm sorry, I meant embodied intuition.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I think it's similar. It's just his word was physical intuition, the word that he used.
Okay.
And he says that scientists, and he thereby went back to the alchemical way of working. He said that scientists have to use their physical intuition, and when a student would come into his room, he would be rolling all over the floor and moving his arms. And then he said, what I'm doing is I'm following with my body the wiggle and the jiggle of all these trajectories of these quantum elements. And as I do that, I begin to sense them, and I get a very vague sense of them. And as I feel them in my body, then I start the mathematics. And in the Manhattan Project, when Oppenheimer would have a problem and he couldn't solve it, he would give it to Richard Feynman, because Feynman could really get into it with his whole body and become identified with the issue. And then out of that identification, he would start writing the math, and he was incredibly creative that way.
So how is that different from embodied intelligence? Or are they the same?
I think it's the same. The notion of embodied intelligence also very much comes from alchemy. It is the way that the body can know things that the mind doesn't know. Okay. So, for instance, when the alchemist would be working on lead, they could feel the heaviness of lead, but it would go all through the body. And it would be the melancholy of lead, and it would be the weight downness of lead. So you get it throughout your whole body. When you work with lead, you get all this sense of heaviness. When you work with gold, it's very up, and it's very much solar, and it's the moon, and it's the sun. And when you work on the moon, it's night, and all kinds of magical things are happening, and you can feel all these things, and that is embodied intuition. You are part of the substance that you're working with.
Cool. So could you say that alchemy is part of quantum physics? Is that a fair assumption?
I think that neither alchemists nor quantum physicists would recognize each other in that. I think that what there is similarity is that you can use the methods that the alchemists were using the body to do science. And I think that more people are doing that now, and that you can use the imagination for science. Because, for instance, Einstein, when he was working on the relativity principle, he was imagining himself with his whole body flying along a light beam. So he was flying along, and as he was flying along, he was beginning to understand what this was all about. And from there, he started to create the relativity theory. So that kind of embodied imagination is being used both in alchemy and in science. There was a time in the 20th century when they tried to cut out all imagination. They said, just shut up and calculate. And that was Heisenberg. But Feynman was the one who said, you can't do that. You have to use imagination. Without imagination, it doesn't work.
That's funny, because I'm sorry, as I was digging a little bit deeper today, I kept coming back to Willy Wonka and that song, You Have to Live in a World of Pure Imagination. And I started thinking, well, that's exactly what it is, because you're manipulating and you're manifesting your dreams. So that would be kind of like embodiment, right?
Yes, that would be the embodiment of imagination. And we're constantly being embodied by imagination, because when you imagine, let's go lead, when you imagine something really sad, then your whole body is influenced by that sadness. It's an embodied feeling. Emotions are fully embodied. Emotions are not in your mind. Emotions are fully throughout your body. And imagination, the same thing.
Okay. Awesome. Okay. I defer to Mike now.
Okay. So what does the modern alchemist look like?
Well, I am not in a laboratory like that beautiful picture that you gave in the opening. I am not in a laboratory. I am sitting with people. I'm a psychoanalyst, and so I work with imagery, because my notion is that I'm specialized in dreaming. And I have worked with dreams for 50 years and have worked professionally with about 45,000 dreams. So I am very interested in that aspect. Now, when you're in a dream, then everything around you is real. The world around you is entirely real, and you know that you're awake. You don't think you're awake, you know you're awake while you're dreaming. So in the dream, you're in a quasi-physical reality because you wake up and then you realize, oh, this wasn't physical reality. It's another kind of reality. So we're constantly in this other kind of reality. So the world of alchemy that I work with is about quasi-physical reality, the world of imagination. And you can do these alchemical processes with the creative imagination. And therefore you can become transformed by working with alchemy. So you can become more subtle, you can become more enriched, you can go deeper, you can gain more value. So it's very important for everyday life.
That's extremely interesting. In the past, I've had, it doesn't happen often, but there are times in which, I'm lucid dreaming and I know that I'm dreaming and I'm able
Right.
to manipulate the environment. So would that, in this sense, be a form of alchemy then?
You could say so, yes. You will notice that you can only manipulate it so far. You cannot manipulate everything. But yes, you could say that lucid dreaming would be a form of alchemy. But what the way that I work is I help people to get into a flashback to their dream so that they get back into the dream through a flashback. And then we begin to work the dream, and that becomes the alchemical work, that becomes the refinement work. And then we are working with what alchemy would call the subtle body. Not the physical body only, but by way of the subtle body and by way of changing things in your interior experience, things begin to change in your body as well. That's why we had the Santa Barbara Healing Sanctuary that is at the moment on hiatus because of COVID, where we work with people who have physical illnesses like MS or Parkinson's. And by working on the imagination, by working on their dreaming, we can affect to a certain degree, not entirely, but we can affect their illness. So that is a way that alchemy can be used today.
Would that be like a way you could treat a survivor who is stressed or PTSD or something like that too?
Yes, absolutely, because they are caught in a dream, in a repetitive dream, right? It's like a nightmare. You're in a nightmare, but you're just awake in the nightmare, right? And so as you're working on that nightmare in a way, you have to watch out. Frequently, when a person is heavily traumatized, you cannot work directly on the trauma, because if you start to work directly on the trauma, the person gets re-traumatized.
Right.
So the way that I work alchemically is that I move them out of the perspective of identification with what happened to another perspective. Like, for instance, if a person has been raped, for instance, and I will not go back to that moment, but I might go back to the room, and in the room I will not have them focus on what happened there, but on the closet over there. There's a closet over there. And you begin to feel the presence of the closet. And what we're doing through embodied imagination is you begin to sense deeply into the presence of the closet until you become identified with the closet. As you're now identified with the closet, then from that perspective, you can begin to feel what's going on over there, not directly, but in peripheral vision, because you're now identified with this part of the image. So what I help people to do is to get out of the identification with the image as it happens, because you can't do that. You just re-traumatize a person. But to move out into an other identification in the image. That's the basis of embodied imagination, is that you can move into different perspectives. Like if you have a dream in which you're chased by a dog and the dog is very aggressive and you're scared and you run away, then you can identify with that running away, but also with the aggression of the dog. And then you can feel it at the same time, and something begins to happen, something begins to change, because now you can feel it at the same time. But the idea is that you can move out of the identification that you're in. And that's
okay. So by identifying with the closet, you've taken them to a safe space. And so now with their peripheral vision, see the attack as an attack. And
you understand that entirely. Yes, exactly what I mean. Yeah,
I'm done.
Exactly what I'm trying to
so, I mean, okay. So they see they had no responsibility for that.
I'll send the invoice.
Yeah, there you go.
Wait, send it to Mike. He's my.
Oh yeah, send it to me. There we go.
Send it to Mike.
So we do have a question here out of the chat room. This is from Alina. She asks, "What does Robert think about seeing shadow people during sleep?"
That's very interesting. The first thing that I would do is to focus on these shadow people. I never, let me start out. I have no idea what dreams mean. In my 50 years of working with dreams, I understand them less and less. So my first answer is
you don't do any dream interpretation or anything like that?
None.
Okay.
What I do is I help. Yes, yeah. I help people to go back to the dream, to flash back to the dream. So if this questioner has shadow people in the dream that are, I don't know what they are, but I would help him to go back to this place, the environment. I will ask, what is it like? Where are you? What is the light like? Are you inside or outside? Or begin to ask questions. Then the environment begins to reestablish itself. Then I begin to sense the presence of the people, and maybe the person is afraid of it. So I first have him feel the fear of the shadow people. But then what I help them to do is to focus on the shadow people and move the perspective away from self to the shadow people, so you can begin to feel the inner life of the shadow people and what the shadow people experience. And as you begin to sense what the shadow people experience, you're in a completely different world than you were when you were just looking at them. So that's how I would work with it.
Oh, that's cool. I've never liked the dream interpretation books because I think
it just doesn't work.
No, it's individual. Like a bird can mean one thing to a person, something totally different to another. It could be freedom, or it could be dinner. I mean, you can't get that out of a book.
Yeah. No, therefore, it's one of the things about alchemy and about dreaming is it's always particular. You always work on something particular. It's a particular bird. That bird is green. That bird over there is a yellow bird. Now, this green bird and the yellow bird are in different places. So if you begin to identify with the yellow bird over there, you get a different experience than if you identify with the green bird over there. The idea is that you can get out of your habitual consciousness. We are locked in our habits of consciousness. And this work, what alchemy also does, is it gets you out of your habits of consciousness into strange other consciousness, because, as I said in the beginning, all the metals are alive, because the metals are the seeds of the planets. So Venus planted copper in the earth. That is the seed of Venus. So that is love and beauty and everything that is related to Venus is implanted in the earth as copper, and the sun implanted gold, and all the planets implanted their seeds, and these seeds are alive and they are very potent, and the alchemist can concentrate them, because the notion in alchemy is that all metals desire to become gold, and the alchemist will enhance that desire.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah,
Cool.
that's absolutely fascinating. When it comes to dreaming, there are a lot of theories these days as to what's happening while you're dreaming. Some people believe that that it's not just happening in the mind. Some believe that you may be communicating with some sort of source. Other people believe that you may actually be moving into another dimension, another place in space time where you are, acting these things out. I know you say you don't do dream interpretation, but what do you think dreams actually are?
I have no idea. I just know that they are. I know that they are real environments in which we find ourselves. We have real experiences. We encounter things that clearly aren't us, that are different, and that behave different. And we can learn a great deal from working with dreams. But what dreams are is a cultural question. Like a scientist may say, there are quakes in the brainstem that we're trying to make sense of. There are people that are saying it's communication with the ancestors. There are people that are saying it's a prediction of the future. There are people that are saying it is your psychological makeup that comes to the fore. All these things say something about the culture that the person is in who you're asking. So it doesn't interest me that much. I'm a phenomenologist. Phenomenology means that I am studying experience. I'm only interested in what people experience. So when a person tells me that in a dream they meet a lion, then I go from the fact that they're meeting that lion in the dream. That's their experience. So that's where I'm going. I'm not going to say, oh, that is the solar animal, or that is your aggression, or whatever. No, that's nonsense. No, it's a lion. And so therefore we have to see that lion. And there are other people that say that let the lion talk. Most lions don't speak English. You have to see that as a real lion. It is not a physical lion because you woke up. It's a quasi-physical lion, but it is no less alive than a physical lion. We meet these living beings in our dreams, these living entities. That's all I know.
Okay. Fair enough. But what about when you do dream of the future, when you have, like what people call a premonition, and I've had this happen before, where there's, within a dream, a place that I've gone to and have seen and experienced, and months later, all of a sudden, boom, I'm in that place, and I had no idea of this place before, saw it in my dream, and once I got there, this is that place I dreamt about 3 months ago or whatever it was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What kind of experience is that?
My scientific explanation of it is that it's weird. It's really weird.
That's really scientific.
Yes.
I like you.
Yeah. And so you can come up with all kinds of, but it's a mystery. You are immediately, when you see, oh my God, déjà vu, I've been here before, you are immediately struck by the sense of the mysterious. So you feel the mysterious. Now you can try to explain it. People will now these days, because we're all into misunderstandings of quantum physics, will say, well, in the quantum world, there is no time, and things can happen in one world before they happen in another world. That is possible. It is entirely possible. But I am more interested in how mysterious this is. There's so many things that we don't understand. It happens. These kind of things, these kind of precognitions happen. The problem about them is that that you don't know when they will happen. There was a very famous seer who could see the future in Prevorst in Germany. And she was predicting the future all the time. And things, as she said, would happen exactly the way that she was predicting them. And so she became very famous. And then she had a vision of a particular building burning down. And so they put police cordon around the building for a long period of time, but nothing happened. So they thought she was wrong. And then it happened years later. So you never know when it's going to happen. She was in touch with something. She could see something, but she didn't know when it was going to happen. And that is always the problem I had when I was training in Zurich in the 70s. You would make an appointment with somebody and you would agree to meet and go to a restaurant, and they wouldn't show up. And why wouldn't they show up? Because they had a dream that a bus exploded, and so they wouldn't go out.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, and so you can become superstitious in that way. I think that we should stay with the sense that this is really odd, that we have these visions and capacities that we do not understand. Science says that it's impossible, but that's just science. It just happens. Science cannot deal with out of control facts.
I definitely agree with that. If you can't set up a control object, then then they don't know what to do. But right. No, I understand from that.
But I love science. Let me.
But you love science,
absolutely. Yeah, I love science. Mm-hmm.
No, so do I. I have like Michio Kaku's books sitting here on my desk, so I love a lot of his work. But but no, I totally understand from that woman's point of view, though. Not knowing when exactly something would happen. Because again, I've had several dreams in the past in which the dream actually came true, or at least some significant element of it came
but the
true.
But
I could never tell. Sometimes it was a couple of years, sometimes it was a couple of months.
Yeah.
But
the thing is, did you know at the time that you had the dream, the next morning, that this was a precognitive dream?
No.
See, that's the point. That is the problem. These kind of things. What happens very often is that you have a dream about somebody and they call you the next day. But at other times you have dreams about somebody and they never call. So you don't know which dreams are precognitive and which aren't. I once worked with one person who could differentiate a little bit. She said the precognitive dreams felt a little bit different, and she felt genuine. But most people cannot differentiate. You cannot differentiate between what's an ordinary dream and what's a precognitive dream. That's the problem.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Because sure, 99% of my dreams are just. I don't know if I'd call them normal dreams, but they just end up being a dream. And other ones that that are precognitive, you have no idea that they are at the time.
Exactly.
So we have another question here out of the chat room. This is from Sarah Youssef. She says, human beings seem to be driven towards a form of evolution. Through alchemy, can a person change to the point of altering themselves to being interdimensional, entering a connected universe?
Well, I think that it depends. That's always a good answer. It's always a good way to begin. If you take that the only real world is a physical world, and that the universes are connected in a physical way, and so that the multiverse is a physical event, then maybe. But if you take that there are many kinds and sorts of realities, and that physical reality is not the only reality, then you are in a different universe every night that you're asleep. Every night that you're dreaming, you're in another universe. You're in a connected universe. It's somehow connected. It is not a physical universe. It's a quasi-physical universe, but it's pretty real when you're in it. And so therefore, it's if you believe that the only reality is physical reality, then your guess is as good as mine. If you believe that there are realities that are non-physical realities and that are just as real, then I would say absolutely, and it happens to you every night.
Okay, now I have two questions. Well, 2.5.
Good.
2.35. One's just could a flashback be the same thing as a deja vu? That's just a yes or no.
Is that your half?
That's my 3/4 of a question.
That's your 3/4. Yeah. I think that in psychiatry they would say that it's different.
Okay.
Yes. They would give it a different definition.
Yeah, I'm studying for my master. Well, I was studying for my master's in psychology. I didn't get quite that far. So I was just curious about that. Now, my other question was, do you think,
There's somebody who wrote something very funny. This person says,
I'll put it
What
back
was
up.
it?
I dream usually that I'm flying, but it hasn't happened yet. But it has happened. The whole point is that what I'm trying to make, it has happened because in the dream, you're actually flying. You have the experience of flying. And so we have to get away from the notion that the only reality is physical reality.
Oh, no. Okay, so that I think it's perfect. It's a segue into my question right there.
There you go.
Good. Very good.
Now, what was it?
Oh, geez.
Hold on.
Happens to me all the time.
It was on the tip of my tongue. Oh, yeah. You, I heard you mention a word, and I probably am not going to say it correctly. So could you define it once I get my question out there? I think it was Negro or hold on.
Negredo.
That's it.
Negredo?
Do you think humanity is in a state of that word you just said? And if it is it because of maybe eradication, like overpopulation? Is there a division between people who only think in the reality and people who think outside the box? And would that be part of the global awakening that people keep talking about? That's one question.
Yeah.
I'll be over here. So.
Yes. Yeah. The whole notion of global awakening, I don't know about it. I think that there's an incredible global change going on. If we are waking up from our deep sleep, I do not know. But I do think that there are periods of Negredo. Let me explain Negredo.
Yes,
Negredo is the black of night. When we're talking about Negredo, we're not talking about black in the racial sense. We're talking about black in the sense of night. So it is a moment where everything falls apart. It is a moment where everything is in a state of rot. It's a moment that everything is in a state of decomposition. And these moments have to happen in order for new things to come into being, because the old has to decompose, has to go to the compost pile. And the compost pile is the Negredo. It has to go to the compost piles for something new to emerge. So I think that as we have all in the world been going through COVID, that certainly has a Negredo aspect. It has an aspect of things falling apart, things rotting, lots of dying, all that kind of stuff is relating, and a lot of polarization. Because it falls apart, so things begin to polarize, and we're living in a magnet with two poles, and you're in one pole or in another pole, and the poles are like this against each other. It's also part of the Negredo, part of the falling apart. So yes, that is happening, but there's also a lot of other things going on. The interesting thing about alchemy is that some of the great alchemical furnaces had 64 different compartments that were all cooking at different rates. We're all cooking different things. We're all melting different things. So there are so many things going on at the same time. So to say that the whole world is going to what the Indians would say a Kali Yuga, I don't know. I don't think so. I think that there are thousands of things going on simultaneously.
Okay. So that's a definite maybe. So
it's a definite, absolute, totally convinced maybe.
Okay. Because I was trying to think about that today, and I'm thinking, well, people who, I don't want to diss myself. I'm in Texas. We're very anti-mask, anti-vaccination, anti-people. Don't get me started.
People.
Yeah. Let's hear it for the cows. Woohoo. So there's that mindset going on. And I see all that playing in with COVID. And then there's other people who are trying to think globally, solutions for humanity. How can we eradicate this? And it kind of seems like those myopic mindsets, and I mean that with love in my heart, are kind of dying and fading away. So I didn't know if that was like a part of the division, the global waking up, like people are coming to their senses finally, hopefully.
Well, I don't know what newspapers you read, but people coming to their senses, I don't see that very much. I see we're on the verge of war in Europe. There are all kinds of things happening in the Middle East. There are horrible things happening in India. There are terrible things happening in China. So I don't know if we're at the verge of global awakening. There are a lot of horrible things going on. And I think that we should always keep that in mind, that there are difficult things going on at the moment. And then there are amazing things going on, amazing people that are doing extraordinary things that are helping the planet in the most beautiful ways. It's all going on at the same time. We have this notion that it has to be one or the other. That's that polarization that comes from the Negredo. But no, it's all happening at the same time, and you have to live with the fact that everything is happening at the same time, and 64 ovens are boiling and melting things at the same time.
So it's a balance. We need to stay balanced.
Sometimes
or
it's very
dark
unbalanced.
In the light. Yeah, it's true.
Well, yes, no, it's my interest is in what is called complexity theory, and complexity theory is about the celebration of being out of balance, because because it is like falling into the future. It's not, you're not in balance, but we are falling into the future. It's like falling in love. It is moving forward, and you're always a little bit off balance, and you have to live with the fact that you're off balance, and then you are in balance in a moment, but absolute balance is death.
Oh, yeah. I've always heard that you're always alive when you're at the edge of your comfort zone, like when you don't know what's going to happen.
That is complexity theory right there.
Well, I have to change majors now. Okay, so I have one other question.
There you
go. Got it. I'm halfway through. The other thing I wanted to ask you about was Neoplatonism, I think.
Neoplatonism.
Yes. Do you think that's coming back? Because I don't hear it called that, but I hear more people talking about things like that.
Yeah. Well, let me first explain, if I can, a little bit about what Neoplatonism is, because for most people it must be a very unfamiliar term. Neoplatonism was developed in the 3rd century, 2nd and 3rd century by Plotinus, and it followed up on Plato, and it was the sense that that everything had soul, that everything in the world was ensouled, and that you could connect to the soul of the world, you could connect to the gods through being in the world, and thereby you could, this is a very particular form of Neoplatonism that I espouse, which is from a philosopher called Iamblichus, that you are actually, with your body, you can experience the gods, and you can experience this alien imagination. And so if you are moving through the world where you realize everything around you is animated, everything around you is alive, this computer that you're looking at right now is alive in a way that it carries its own animation, then you're in that Neoplatonic notion that soul is everywhere. Soul is not just in us. Everything carries soul. And that would be the alchemical perspective, because many of the alchemists would be called also Neoplatonists, in the way that the creative spark is in everything. So you can start working on anything as long as it fascinates you. You can work on anything, and out of that, the creative spark will come to the surface. So yes, I think in that way, there are more and more people that I know who are interested in getting back to the soul of the world. And that creates a very different sense of ecology, because if everything is alive around you, you cannot just go into a rainforest and mow everything down, because it's alive.
So do you think the creative imagination is similar to law of attraction, like how you try and manifest? If you visualize it, you manifest it? Is that along like the Esther Hicks and all that?
Yes, but on a much earlier level. There was the notion of the law of attraction is ancient. And it is that all bodies in the in the universe are pulled towards each other. There is a sense that everything is pulling together. And Newton added calculus and called it gravity. And so that is the law of attraction, is basically about gravity, that everything pulls together. This notion that you can manifest, yes, you can manifest to a certain point in the way that you can focus and concentrate and work hard on something and pull it towards you, and then sometimes it actually happens. The danger that I find with notions of the law of attraction, as it is professed by many people now, is that if you get cancer, then you must have attracted that to yourself. And then suddenly it becomes something that you also start to feel guilty about. So the law of attraction may work to a certain degree. You can make yourself into a magnet that begins to attract things, but it is not that if something bad happens to you, you attracted that to yourself. That I find despicable.
Right. I agree. Yeah, when we had I volunteered. I got the first COVID shots and everything, and then we had to get the booster. And when I went to get the booster, the man was like, "Oh, you're just going to take a couple of days off because it's going to kick your butt, and you're gonna be sick." And I told him, "No, I'm not." And he goes, "Oh no, everyone's sick." I said, "Not me. Nothing happened to me." All right. I mean, so you can use this also for healing.
Yes. Well, that's it's called placebo.
Okay.
And placebo is very, very important. I am not knocking placebo. I think that there are currently many, many very good scientific studies about placebo, that expectation does influence what happens to you. So that if you give a person morphine in front of them, then you have to give half the dose than if you give it behind them. So if you see it, it works much better than if you don't see it. And there are many ways that that the placebo effect works. And so, yes, it can be that by your conviction, you did not get a reaction. It could also be that you just didn't get a reaction.
Yeah.
But right.
It's my lifestyle of Diet Coke.
Because not everybody does. So yeah.
Yeah. Diet Coke is going to be the cure. Mark my words. Yeah.
So I think that the placebo effect is very, very important, and it's talked down upon, but the placebo effect actually is getting stronger and stronger, and more clinical trials are being pulled because they cannot outperform placebo. We now know that the placebo effect of Prozac is greater than the actual effect of Prozac when Prozac just began. So placebo is there all the time. It is a form of imagination. It's embodied imagination. It's the way that an image that you have, that you were in an image, right? Let's say that it actually was happening because you had that feeling. Right. You were in the image of, it's not going to happen to me. That's an image. Right? So you were in that image, and that image could have had, if it actually did, could have had physical effects. Images have physical effects, and those physical effects are either called placebo or nocebo. Nocebo is the opposite of placebo, where things go really bad when a doctor tells you you have 3 weeks to live. It's not good.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. Lots to think about.
Fantastic. So we have a little bit more than 10 minutes left in the show. And Robert, you pioneered the embodied imagination method. I was hoping you could tell us a little bit more about what this method is.
Embodied imagination is about the interface between imagination and body. So that everything that comes to you as an image, like for instance in a dream, has effects on your body. Everything that happens to your body has effects on your imagination. And the imagination, the embodied imagination as a technique, is that The way I see it is that when you are in a real image, like a real image is like a dream image. A dream image is a real image. It's an environment where you find yourself that you experience as real. That's a real image. You can move out of your habits of consciousness. Your habits of consciousness is the story that you tell yourself over and over again. It's very important if you want to drive a car, you have to have habits. But it also, if you are in a creative process, your habits of consciousness may really hamper you. So you can get out of that habitual perspective by beginning to identify with other characters in the image, with other presences in the image. So the craft and the art of embodied imagination is to move out of your habitual perspective into other perspectives. And as you see and feel and shift perspectives, then the whole world around you is different. So, for instance, if you read Red Sulphur, the book that I've just written, you will be in another world. You will be in a 17th century world where all kinds of magical things are described as fact. And it is, I wrote it to show that if what the alchemists say was true, then this world would be a magical world. And it starts actually with a letter that was written by one of the greatest philosophers of the second millennium, Benedict Spinoza. And Spinoza wrote a letter where he went to a goldsmith to inquire after an alchemical transformation that had taken place. So actually, he was looking at a transformation from silver to gold that had taken place, that the silversmith swore by, that the mint master of the Netherlands, which was at that moment one of the greatest powers in the world, the mint masters of the Netherlands confirmed that it was actual gold, that it had been silver before and it became gold. So I took that. If that's really true, and some of the great minds of that era say it's true, Robert Boyle said it was true, and he is the founder of chemistry. And Newton was an alchemist, he said it was true. Let's take them by their words. If that's true, then there is a whole world out there that we know nothing about, and let's explore it. And the only way you can explore that is through fiction. So that is the way that you can embody the imagination. One of the ways I embodied the imagination is listening to the characters, let them speak, wait until they had something to say. I didn't say anything. I just watched their world. So in that, they embodied the imagination and I just was the scribe.
Okay, so that's interesting because I'm a writer as well, and I have some of my work is fiction. Most of it's nonfiction, but I have a couple of fiction pieces. So I find that fascinating that you've basically put together this world that I guess exists in your mind, in your imagination, and you're letting that play out, and you're essentially writing what you see, and that has become your book.
Yes. And I think that for many fiction writers, that's the way you do it. You let your characters talk. And I can very clearly see when my characters are not doing the talking, but when I'm doing the talking, it's much less interesting. It's much more interesting when the characters talk. So I have to put myself over there. What I give my characters is my writing skills, because I've written 12 books, so I have some writing skills, and I give them over to the characters and let them use it. But I think when I write, I'm much more boring.
No.
I get it though. But how do you use that then for, say, trying to solve an everyday problem in your life?
Mm-hmm. Well, for instance, I was talking about being chased by a dog, a person who had that dream. Now, this person is going through lots of ups and downs. She gets very angry and bites everyone, and at other moments she's scared out of her mind. She doesn't know how fast to run. Now, and if we work the dream from the perspective of both the one who's running and the one who's biting, then she can hold both of those together, and a transformation begins to happen in an alchemical way throughout their body, where she can, instead of being either terrified or aggressive, where she can feel suddenly alert, and she feels alert throughout her body. And that gives her a very different way of being in the world. She's now different as a teacher that she is. She's different with her children. She's different in her trying to understand the world. So everything changes because she's holding these two elements together at the same time. So that's the way you can work with it.
Okay. Fascinating. Victoria, you have any follow-ups? We're getting towards the end. We only have like 5 minutes left, so I want to make sure that.
Okay. Is involuntary imagination the same thing as channeling? Ooh, let's get into the woo-woo.
The involuntary imagination is, I take dreaming as my example of the involuntary imagination. You have very little or no influence over it. When you're talking about lucid dreams, then you have a little bit of influence over it. But usually the involuntary imagination, you do not have influence over. It comes to you. You're part of it. You're embedded in it. It's a world around you. Channeling goes from a particular metaphysical perspective. The metaphysical perspective is that you are getting truth that comes to you from another reality. And you're taking in that truth from another reality. So that is a particular metaphysical setup. So in that way, you could say, yes, channeling is a form of involuntary imagination, but a channeler will say to you, no, it's not imagination. A channeler will say, no, it's truth that is coming to me from another world. So it is about what perspective you're in. I am what I call a radical agnostic. I absolutely, to the bottom of my feet, don't know. So I don't know if it comes from another world. I just know that it happens to the person.
I appreciate that honesty.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of people that we talk to, or that we have talked to over the years, that think that they have every single answer. But the fact that you're willing to say, hey, I don't know what it is, it happens, I don't know for sure what it is fantastic. And I love that.
Oh, yes. Good. Well, it's my life.
Yeah. Validation is good.
Yeah, absolutely. So we got about 2 minutes left. Robert, where can people find you? We've been putting youngplatform.com down there on the bar.
Yes, I think that's the best way. I have hundreds of hours of teaching on alchemy on youngplatform.com. And so I think that people can find me there. If people are interested in red sulfur, which I hope you are, you can find that at Amazon. And go to the revised second edition, because after I'd written everything up, after the whole thing became revealed to me, I had to change things in the beginning, because things that were backstory in the beginning had to become upfront. So take the second revised edition, and you can find all that at Amazon. And I hope you look it up. And I think youngplatform.com for all my so-called intellectual work.
Fantastic. So this cover here, this is the first edition. Don't
the first edition. One. Don't buy this one. Buy the other
one. Great. Well, Robert, it was really fantastic talking with you this evening. I think we learned a lot.
So much
tonight.
fun.
I appreciate that. Yeah.
Yes.
I liked it.
All right. Well, everybody, visit robertyoungplatform.com. Jung, like Carl Jung, platform.com. And Robert, again, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. Enjoy.
All right, have a great.
Nice to meet you.
Well, I guess it's the middle of the day there, so have a great
day.
Yes, it's the middle of the day. Thank you.
Bye now.
Bye.
All right, Robert Bosnak. Yeah, that was an interesting conversation.
Oh my gosh, yes. I have more questions, but I don't know how to ask them. So
it's you just ask.
I can't pronounce half the words. I need to get a little bit more into my belt before.
Yeah.
I always thought alchemy was metals, but there's like an internal alchemy, I guess you could do, or a spiritual alchemy, or physical alchemy.
it's transformation, and the guys back in the day, like I mentioned, Nicholas Flamel back then, his stories, Robert's, take place later on, but their idea was to turn base metals into gold. That was the physical metallurgy type of idea, that transformation. So Robert's idea seems to be more like internal transformation, and I like his ideas of the imagination, and using the imagination to perform that type of alchemy, which is fantastic. Yeah.
So if I say Chris Pratt will be in the movie version, will that be like a sort of alchemy transformation? I'm putting it out there.
Put it out there.
With Tom Cruise as the father. Oh, I would go see that.
There you go.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right, let's go ahead and get to the shout outs for this evening. I want to thank Alina, our chat moderator, for moderating the chat. Let's dig up the, let's see, where is that crazy? There we go. The participants list, which again has like 5 people on it. So want to thank Hunter Road Media's Fairy Queen, Diane Hilbert. Thank you very much for joining us again this evening. Helen Espinoza, thank you as well. Jill Ninchinsky. Joy, thanks for joining us tonight. And TFT Tarot for today. There is the very incomplete participants tab. Thank you. Don't thank you, YouTube. But because, well, this has been going on with YouTube forever. Because, constantly in the chat room, we have Mary Haygood. Thank you very much, Mary, for joining us this evening. Andrew and Trucking Gnomes has been constantly chatting in there as well. Yeah, so it's ridiculous. I don't understand why some of these people aren't showing up. Life Supernatural Lost Adventures. Thanks for joining us tonight. Android Purity. Thank you once again for joining us tonight. Of course, Sarah Youssef. Thank you as always. Rob Zip joined us tonight. Thank you, Rob, for joining us. Scroll up here a little bit. And Thayer was in the house. Great to see you, Thayer. A little bit more. Stacy Comiskey, of course. Thank you as always, Stacy. I don't think Adam Tiller has been joining us with the new time, unfortunately.
Are we going to have to send him a muffin basket?
You might have to. Might have to. Anybody else? So I'm going to scroll back down here. If we missed you, we do apologize. Try to get everybody. If you want a shout out, go ahead and throw it in there. We're all going to be up here. There's Adam. Let me. There's the eyes. He's lurking, and he's got the. That's a pen or a paintbrush, so he must be doing some artwork right now.
Okay, from here it looks like a scalpel, so I don't know.
I don't think he's performing surgery.
Are you watching Dexter? I don't know.
Probably Curse of Oak Island.
Okay.
Dun, dun, dun.
One of these days.
You have some seasons to go back because it's, what is it, season 8 now? Yeah.
I really need to watch stuff.
Yeah, that's an interesting show. I mean, I don't usually watch like regular network television, like sitcoms and garbage like that. I don't, that's not my thing, but stuff like Curse of Oak Island, Ancient Aliens, that sort of stuff, that's what I watch. So
yeah. I'm like only like on season 3 of Ancient Aliens. How far does it go?
You're a ways back because they've been around for like 15 years.
Oh crap. I mean, crud. Well, I don't have a TV, so I have to.
You have to watch it on the computer?
Yeah, or my phone. I'd always watch, during my lunch break.
Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense.
But
so, speaking of television shows, though, so tomorrow night, no Connecting the Universe interactive class on connecteduniverseportal.com. We'll go ahead and put the link up. And Alina did earlier. Thank you, Alina, for, let me see if I can find her post there. Scroll up here a little bit. There it is. So that's the link for connecteduniverseportal.com. But no Connecting the Universe class tomorrow night because kind of last minute, I got hit up over the weekend to fly out to LA tomorrow to film for a television show. So I'll be doing the filming on Thursday, but I fly out tomorrow. So no Connecting the Universe class tomorrow. I will try to, and I'll probably post it over the weekend, any like behind the scenes footage type of stuff that I'll be able to get. Now, of course, there are NDAs and things like that in place, so I can't discuss who it is or what it's about just yet. So even with my behind the scenes stuff, I'm going to have to be really careful about what I post. But yeah. Dun, dun, dun.
You know, I do hair and makeup. That's all I'm saying. You know,
okay.
Costuming. If you need somebody, I can pull cable.
Come on out. Fly in.
Sure. Got nothing else going. Oh, wait. I do.
You do. Yes. Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you. Finally got a job.
Yeah.
We'll see how that goes.
Really happy for you. Really happy.
Oh, thank you and me both.
Yeah.
So's the landlord. Oh, he's really happy.
I'm sure. So, all right. That is going to do it for this evening. So join us again next week. Let me bring up the schedule here. Next week. Yeah, something along that line. I think it's the Psychic Kids we're doing. I think so. I think we're doing Psychic Kids next week. Come on. It's slowly coming up. Yep. Ellie Molina on Psychic Children. Ooh. After that, we have Leslie Mitchell-Clark on Past Life Regression. Then in open week, I have to schedule somebody in. Dan Class will be joining us for the Hinsdale House. I didn't put it on the schedule. Natalie Jones is in here somewhere on Paraflix. So,
nice.
Yeah.
Get my resume ready? Is that what you're saying?
There you go. So, All right, everybody. That is going to do it for this evening. Catch you all next week. Same time, 8:30 p.m. Eastern. And I know some of the banners and some of the locations aren't quite corrected yet because there's a lot of places to change it. So it's 8:30 p.m. Eastern. You guys know now. Come on. Till next time. Bye. If time really exists.
Oh, geez.